Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Wrap, brought to you by Michigan Medicine Headlines. I'm Dan Ellman with the Department of Communication.
And I'm world-famous co-host Jeremy Fallis, also with the Department of Communication. Today, we're going to look out for your well-being as we discuss that topic and the newly renamed Office of Wellbeing at Michigan Medicine.
Now, before we get into that, take just a few minutes to get caught up on any episode of The Wrap you may have missed, including last week's show in honor of Nutrition Month. You can find them on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or any other podcast hosting platform. Shows are also available on the Michigan Medicine YouTube channel and as part of the Headlines Week in Review.
All right, let's talk well-being with two members of our organization's leadership team, Dr. Elizabeth Harry and Dr. Deb Weinstein. First, let's have the two of you introduce yourselves and share your roles with us at Michigan Medicine.
Well, hi, it's really nice to be here, and thank you so much for having us. So I'm Dr. Elizabeth Harry. I am our new Chief Wellbeing Officer. I started in November. I'm very excited to be here. I'm also a primary care provider and see patients still, and very much enjoy that. And just delighted to be here with you guys today, and Dr. Weinstein to talk about how we're trying to advance well-being at Michigan Medicine.
Thanks, Liz. And I'm Deb Weinstein. I joined Michigan Medicine almost 2.5 years ago as Executive Vice Dean for Academic Affairs and Chief Academic Officer. And I still feel like a newbie because there are so many folks with great loyalty to this place that have been around a long time. But I'm thrilled to be here as well.
That's great. All right, Dr. Weinstein, let's start with you. I know you have a unique perspective as the Chief Academic Officer. What would you say are the most significant challenges you've seen and experienced with faculty that may threaten their well-being?
Well, I think as we're all aware, there have been a lot of challenges in recent years, and the pandemic is the obvious one, but there's been greater intensity in healthcare. And I think what bothers people a whole lot is when you can't do everything you want to do for your patient, for the patient in front of you. And that happens all too often. I think taking a step back, the looming maybe under the surface stressor that we're feeling is that healthcare is really changing. It has been for recent decades, but I think it's changing at a faster rate now and in ways that we can't predict what the work of today will look like in 5 or 10 years. So we have to get ready for a change, but we don't know what the change will be. And that's hard.
Now, Dr. Harry, you've been here for several months. You joined us from Colorado. What is your experience with well-being and burnout here at Michigan Medicine compared to your previous positions?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, Jeremy. I mean, one of the things that I've observed over time is that, when you're in an organization, it's very easy to feel like the challenges you're experiencing are very unique to that organization. I think, as Deb was mentioning, that healthcare is changing really rapidly, and the stressors and the pressure that people are under are not only ubiquitous across the country, but actually internationally. I've been at conferences where people are coming from other countries and coming to courses to learn how to do this work from as far away as Australia. So I think what's really important to realize is that the experience of burnout is consistent across many organizations and really seems to be similar. And the drivers really fall in two main buckets, which is the operational inefficiencies or the difficulties in getting our care delivered, and then the culture or climate issues. And this can either be internal culture or increasing sort of stressors with our patients and difficulties there. But I think it's pretty ubiquitous regardless of where you go. What I will say, and what really drew me to Michigan Medicine, is that the culture of a team here and the real interdisciplinary nature sets us up very well to be able to address this and be leaders in this nationally and be able to really get to the root cause of what's driving this burnout.
So when it comes to sort of being leaders and addressing these issues, what are some of the, initiatives, whether new or ongoing, that are taking place right now within the medical school or across Michigan Medicine that really aim to address and support well-being?
Yeah, it's a great question, Daniel, and I appreciate you asking that. We've taken an approach of looking at well-being from 3 main areas. So one is the organizational well-being, and this is sort of operational inefficiencies or difficulty in getting the job done, as I mentioned. And there's a lot happening in that space. There's been a huge movement here around HRO and trying to address improvements from that perspective and making sure that we're delivering as safe as care as possible. We have programs going on around surgical ergonomics to make sure that our entire surgical team, as they are providing surgery or doing surgery, are able to have good ergonomics and not hurt their body over years of doing this. We have projects addressing administrative burden, looking at email burden, the way we deal with our in-basket, and digital minimalism. So there's a lot happening in the organizational well-being space. In the culture of well-being, which is the second bucket, sort of how do we treat each other? How do we work together as a team? Again, this high reliability organization work, this HRO work that's been ongoing is really pivotal here. There's been great work through the OHE office and a lot being done in climate and culture overall. There's work going on around psychological safety, particularly with our surgical faculty and trainees, really looking at the portal messages that we're getting from our patients and addressing any issues of violence that may be coming up there. Making sure that we're recognizing one another with a novel interdisciplinary recognition program to strengthen perioperative workforce morale and relations, looking at family teams and caregiver burden. And then there's a lot happening in the personal resilience space, which is the third bucket. And this is how do we give people the skills to cope with the organizational issues and the culture issues while we're working to improve them. We're doing a positive intelligence coaching pilot that we're just wrapping up right now. There's some second victim work in OB-GYN, some work around survivals of interpersonal violence and medical training. And we have a narrative medicine series. So that's just scratching the surface, but there's a lot of projects going on in each of these spaces to really try to address both the drivers and give individuals the skills to cope with the drivers of burnout.
I think that answer just talks about the breadth and the scope of all this work, right? And this is sort of for both of you. I assume, though, that you're constantly seeking feedback from everyone who works here, right? And, whether it's faculty members or staff members, at what is causing them stress? What is causing them to not have well-being? Can you talk just a little bit about soliciting that feedback and then turning it into projects and initiatives?
I can take a quick stab at that. As everyone knows, the Vital Voices survey is an important source of feedback. So hopefully when we have the analysis for this year, we'll see first that a lot of people weighed in and took that opportunity to give feedback. And hopefully we'll also get some really granular information pointing us to priorities and ideas for addressing the things that are going to have the biggest impact in improving engagement and wellness and satisfaction and inspiration to keep doing what we're doing. I think also we have to take opportunities to give feedback in the moment to our colleagues, both ideas for improving things and also appreciation of efforts that even if they haven't yet borne fruit.
The only thing I just wanted to add to what Deb had shared is we have this incredible network that's been built of our faculty associates and our wellness advocates across the system, now our well-being advocates. And we have representation from every department. We have staff representation, nursing representation, and we have regular meetings with them to get feedback as well on the projects people are doing and different things that are going on across the system. So that's another great way to get feedback. Another mechanism is the Voices of the Staff program. We've been able to get some feedback from that as well, which has been really helpful in guiding some of our strategic planning.
And the leadership rounding, which grew out of feedback from prior surveys, is another mechanism that I think is proving to be useful.
Yeah, I think that's become very popular, and I think all the team members who are on the front lines really appreciate that. That's a touch point that didn't always exist earlier, and I think it means a lot to a lot of folks. I mean, they're asking for it, and I'm glad that the leadership team is following through on that. So kind of switching gears a little bit, and we didn't really touch on this yet, but this used to be known as the Wellness Office. And so Dr. Harry, you and your team have been doing a lot of work. There's been a rebrand. It's now the Office of Wellbeing. Can you talk about a little bit like defining your strategic priorities and how, why is it the Office of Wellbeing? What is the difference between well-being and wellness? And what are some of the top priorities that you're looking to achieve?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. So when we think about wellness, that's really, so we could go to sort of the definitions to help us, but wellness is really a state of physical, mental, and social well-being, our physical presentation. So this is what we go to our physicians to have help with, or we can have financial wellness. These are things that M Healthy actually helps us with quite a bit. And we have a lot of resources in place there. Whereas workplace well-being is sort of the quality of experiencing well-being at work, being able to thrive in the workplace. It's characterized by feeling energy for work, connecting to your sense of purpose, feeling psychological safety, and like you can get the job done that you're really wanting to get done. Other important words to define are also moral injury. So this comes up a lot. And this is sort of when you feel like your internal compass or your internal ethics are in conflict with what you're able to do or what you're able to deliver. And then, of course, we have behavioral health concerns, which are medical conditions where we have depression, anxiety, or even suicide ideation. And I think it's really important to split all of those out and be clear about the differences, because we're very lucky here at Michigan. We have a wealth of resources. We kind of have an embarrassment of riches, I sort of say. And we have, M Healthy, who can offer a lot in the wellness space. In fact, I've used their backup childcare 3 times already since I've been here, which I appreciate. We have our Office of Wellbeing, which is really trying to remove the stressors in the workplace, in the organizational well-being, how we do our job, and the climate of well-being. We have our Ethics Consult Service, which is an amazing place to talk about those sort of ethical conundrums when we're experiencing that moral injury. And then we have OCWR, the Office of Counseling and Workplace Resilience, which does a really good job in offering just-in-time support. Behavioral health support can help refer people out to therapy and get people connected. And then, of course, don't forget your primary care provider and your healthcare professionals for seeking help for behavioral health concerns. So I think it's really important to sort of just think about what each of those words mean. Now, when we think about the Office of Wellbeing, we are really trying to, as I mentioned, remove the stressors or address the stress or the upstream component of what is driving burnout, which is an occupational hazard. And so in order to do that, we're going to focus on 3 main areas, with data collection being the 4th. And I sort of alluded to them earlier, but the first one is organizational well-being. This is our operational efficiency, our ability to seamlessly and frictionlessly deliver healthcare, and working at the top of our scope, the top of our abilities to be able to deliver the easiest healthcare to our patients, and addressing anything that's in the way of doing that. The second area of priority is culture of well-being, or climate. This is how we treat one another. This is our psychological safety, our ability to say, I have a concern, I have a question, I'd like to raise my hand about that. This is how much we trust one another and assume positive intent. And then the third is personal resilience. So this is, what individual skills do I have as an individual to cope with those operational inefficiencies or the climate issues as we work to address those. So we have those 3 focus areas, and then continued data collection, both quantitative and qualitative, from places like the Vital Voices survey, to really understand how we're doing in each of these spaces.
That's really impressive work, and I'm glad that you shared that with all of us and all of our listeners and viewers. Now, before we go, I have a question for each of you. If there's one piece of advice that you would want to give to our employees about well-being or self-care, what would that piece of advice be?
Hard to limit it to one piece. Let me see if I can maybe cheat and give you a few. First, I would say we all in any engagement have good days and bad days. And I find it useful, like if there's been a really frustrating day, to kind of think back to, hopefully not too long ago, a really great day, because we're here for a purpose, and the work we do is really important. And every win, every time we do something even small that makes somebody else's circumstance better, feels really good. So connecting to the meaning, even on a day when you may not have felt it as powerfully, I think helps. And then I think unplugging and disconnecting from work when you're not at work also really helps. So being more intentional about that, which I know personally is not always easy, is helpful. And then I think the last thing I'll cram in there is lean on the team, because putting those 2 things together, like wanting to do everything we can for the people around us, but also needing to unplug, means that not everything has to rest on any one person's shoulders. We are great. We have a great team here. We're lucky to have that. Use it.
I love those, Deb. So I would say grace. Give it to yourself, give it to your patients, and give it to everyone else, because what we do is hard. We are seeing people on their hardest days, and we are often doing very hard things. And I think with that comes this assumption of positive intent that I firmly believe the vast majority of people are good people trying to do the best they can with the resources and skills they have at the time. And so if we can come together as a team and try to think about the problems that everyone in healthcare is facing right now as academic problems and how can we solve them together as a team, there's nothing we can't do. But if we start picking at each other and fighting with each other about it, we won't be able to get there. So we really got to come at it with this tone of grace.
I think those are all very positive messages, and I think wonderful things that we can take not only in our professional lives, but also in our personal lives. So to that, thank you, Liz and Deb, for sharing your insight today. And if you want to learn more about the Office of Wellbeing, go to mmheadlines.org. That's mmheadlines.org.
All right, it's time for the lightning round, and we ask one of our guests 4 questions they haven't seen before. Liz, since well-being, of course, is the theme of today's show, we'll put you on the hot seat. Are you ready to go?
I guess so.
Okay, as we mentioned earlier, you recently moved here from Colorado, so we need to know, what do you prefer, mountains or lakes?
Ooh, that's really hard, but I do think lakes. And you know what's interesting is I didn't know that because I grew up in Colorado, and it actually wasn't until I moved to Boston that I fell in love with lakes and realized how much I love them. So that was a big draw for me to come.
Nice, nice. All right, sticking with the theme of well-being, what is your favorite way to wind down after work hours?
So I have a habit that I don't do every day, but I do when I can, which is to try to spend 10 minutes of focused attention with each of my kids doing something that they like to do. And so sometimes it means we're throwing stuffies in a basketball hoop or playing basketball or playing Play-Doh or whatever, but it is the fastest way for me to decompress. And it's a really lovely way to just have one-on-one time with the kids.
I think many parents can agree with that one. All right, so what would be your top piece of advice for the next generation of leaders at Michigan Medicine?
I also think, back to the previous idea of grace, like be gentle with yourself, and gentle with, everyone around you. I think as we start our leadership journey, it's very easy to look at problems and think, gosh, this must be really easy to solve. And why has no one solved it yet? And I think as we continue along that journey, we start to find why it hasn't been solved yet and how hard it is. And I think in both places, there's a lot of space for grace, right? Having grace for the people that are trying to solve it and having grace for yourself when it's really hard to solve. And so just, to be patient, and that it's an arc and a curve, and you're learning every day. I know I am, and that we just continue to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, this one's a little less heavy than that question. Spring has sprung. So what would you say is your favorite spring tradition?
Well, I do like cleaning my house. I know that's kind of lame, but but I do. I like getting it feeling all
One of
fresh.
the few who likes that. Yeah, go ahead.
And getting all the things out. But I would say I love getting the kids out of the house. I love like getting on our bikes, getting the bike helmets on, going out for a bike ride, going down to the woods, whatever, but just getting outside. We are a big outdoor family, and I love being outside.
Well, thank you, Liz, for playing along. Those were tremendous answers. You're off the hot seat, so congratulations on that. And thank you also for sharing your insight and your leadership in the Office of Wellbeing. And we will tell our listeners and viewers once again, if you want to learn more about the office and all that it does for our team members, go to mmheadlines.org.
All right, Jeremy. So we asked Liz, does she prefer the mountains or the lakes? So I want to know, what about you?
I don't know that they're mutually exclusive, are they? I know that's such a tiptoed answer, but if I had to pick only one, I would prefer mountains. I grew up on the West Coast, viewing the mountains every day, and when we moved to the East Coast, seeing those little bumps made me sad for the West Coast. And now living here, there are no hills. It makes me sad when my kids go up a small hill here and like, oh, it's so big, and I'm like, buddy, that's like 10 feet tall. Like, that's not a hill. But anyway, I would say mountains.
Gotcha.
How about you?
Yeah, so I like looking at the mountains off in the distance, but I will say, as a wheelchair user, mountains are not very wheelchair friendly. So I am not going to go with mountains. Neither are lakes really wheelchair friendly. So I'm actually going to go none of the above, but I love like hiking through the woods. Like if you can get a paved path through the woods, it just is so peaceful. You hear the birds, you hear just sort of nature around you. You don't hear cars on the street, things like that. So I'm going to go the woods.
That's fair. Although, I mean, be on a boat, right? That would be all right.
You could. That would be fine. I'd be okay
Okay.
with that. Yeah.
No, but a hike is healthier. All right. Well, thanks for the answer, Dan. And well, now let's transition to our final piece. It is time for the weekly trivia contest. This week's question is: earlier this week, Sparrow Health System rebranded with a new name. What is that new name? Once again, what is the new name of Sparrow Health System? You can find the answer in headlines. And once you know it, send it to headlines@med.umich.edu for a chance to win a prize.
That's all we have for today. Thank you, Liz and Deb, for joining us. And thanks, as always, to all of our listeners and viewers for everything you do for patients, families, and each other. We'll see you next time.